Hello, friends. Hey, so glad you chose to be with us today. And we have in the studio with us Steve Roemerman. Hey, Steve.
Howdy.
How you doing, brother?
Good.
For those that don't know you, you're married to Colleen.
That's right.
And how many years?
Well, long enough that I'd rather not say.
Ah.
Because you'd figure out that I married her when she was like 3 years old.
Oh, the age thing.
Yeah,
so you're doing that for the benefit of your bride, not to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
How many kids you have?
2, 5 grandchildren.
5. Okay, test. Name the 5 grandchildren.
The oldest is Sydney, then Reagan. Audrey is the middle kid, and then Chloe, and the youngest is Stephen Jr.
How old is Stephen Jr.? Is he?
He's going off to college this fall.
Oh, wow. Where's he going to college?
Same place I went, Rolla, Missouri, engineering school.
Wow. So does he know what he wants to be?
Yeah, I think he wants to be a civil engineer.
Really?
Yeah. I've got 3 of the 5 are engineers.
Wow. We're having problems with engineers right now. I reckon they could help us.
Nobody asked me my opinion, but I approved anyway. So if my opinion mattered, I would be in favor of it.
Yeah, I hadn't shared this with anybody. The civil engineers that we're using, of course, you know me, unfortunately, dollars was driving it, so that was the number one reason for hiring these guys. And I'm not the only one because they are so busy. Michael is submitting the site plan, and he says, I really don't think they're going to have all the civil engineer stuff. He said, I think I've drawn enough to make them happy because you meet the first time, it's kind of a, hi, how are you? And then it goes to all the different, departments. Well, then you have to have all the final. And so They straight up told us, they said, you might want to get somebody else. I'm thinking, let's get somebody else. And Michael's going, I think we need to work with them. We're going, okay, well, you're the architect. I'm listening to you, You are a founding board member at Dallas Metro.
I am.
What do you remember about our first time when you and I got together? Can you remember back that far, brother?
Yeah, well, I can. The thing that I remember most distinctly is that both you and I wondered why Lee Lebsack thought that this was a good idea.
Yeah.
Right? It seemed like an unlikely combination. You and me seemed like an unlikely combination. Clearly, I could tell on the face you thought it was unlikely. And I was trying to be diplomatic, but I couldn't figure it out either.
Yeah, I so many times I'm going, what? Am I even supposed to be in this room? I felt like a fish out of water. Never even been to a board meeting of any kind, brother. I had no idea whatsoever what to expect, and yet it's turned out to be a lifetime friendship, not just board member, but friendship. Something that I'll always be grateful for. That both,
me too.
Neither of us bailed out and went, this is a bad dream that somebody had,
Sometimes it's good to trust other people's judgment.
Yeah. I quickly learned my indebtedness to Lee, even to this day. I'm glad he's closer now. Moved to Frisco. Be a little easier to see him than where he was before. But you've been with us lifetime. Why have you stayed with us?
I think several reasons. One is I believe deeply in the ministry. I want to be a part. Most people want to be a part of something they believe in. I'm no different, I think, than a lot of other people. I believe in you. I saw what you and Barbara did, what you had invested, what you poured yourself in. The commitment that you had and still have is very humbling. Very humbling to just be associated with that level of commitment. And then the need is so big, so real, so hard to understand, I think, that once you get your head wrapped around it, it doesn't feel right to not want to try to make some difference.
Yeah. I've always believed it's one thing not to know, because when you don't know, then to some degree you're not accountable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But once you know, then you are accountable.
Yeah.
You got to go. I got to do something.
You've lost your excuse.
Exactly. So, well, several years ago, Lone Star Analysis put together some analytics about Metro, and then recently you jumped in and gave us an update. And for those who were watching or listening to Alan Kennedy, it was just to help us show what the Lord has done here in the city for over 3 decades now. So as you looked at those figures, what was something that jumped out at you?
Well, I would say 2 things. Probably the headline, I think, is what a business person would call the enormous return on investment. So if you think about a lot of charities, they'll say for so many dollars you can feed a family for a week. Well, for less than $200, you can permanently change somebody's life. That's what the analytics suggest. It's not just, well, we made a difference this week, although that happens. It's the investment to permanently change the trajectory of somebody's life in Metro. In depending on which year's dollars you use, is somewhere between $165 and $200. Yeah, that's a big deal.
It's and I would agree with that. I probably very in tune with other nonprofits, what they're doing. Even though I'll be the first to admit, I understand much more of what's happening here in the United States because this is where I live. This is where I spend my time. I've been overseas, but not a lot. And I definitely, a lot of stuff is happening overseas. I have a hard time wrapping my brain around it going, oh. And then but I also look at how they're, I have to use the word packaging, but it is a package, how they're packaging their message to get people to help them, right? And it's like you said, you spend X amount of dollars for X amount of days, and then we can do this. And I'm 100% supportive, because particularly when you first walk into a situation, you really need some triage. In other words, there's some emergency care that needs to happen immediately.
Yep.
And many of these, that's what it is. It's what I would call triage. You're trying to just stop the bleeding, And I agree with that. I totally agree with that. But there has to be, there's got to be a next step. Otherwise, you're going to be doing triage forever, right? There has to be some kind of change. And so I think the thing that I hope separates Metro from some organizations is that we're looking for long-term change. Now, the mistake that I made in the early days was I thought it could happen in one generation. I really thought if you changed one generation, then you would change the trajectory of that community. I'm not so sure that's the case.
Well, what the data suggests is that you change the trajectory of that person. Maybe you've changed the trajectory of an entire family, but the community continues. Now, some of the community changes because new people move in, but, Matthew 16:11, the poor will always be with you.
Right. And that's something that James talks about. I'm talking about James Musioki for those that aren't familiar with James. James has been with us. James came here on a missions trip, 22 years ago. But he talks about this. He and I travel on Sundays to local churches, and he mentions this everywhere we go. And I really appreciate it. He says the Bible says the poor will always have with you. And the reason he brings that up is that particularly in our city, and I don't think Dallas is that different than everybody else, we want to get people saved and we want to move them wherever. Or in the business world, we don't want to get them saved. We just want to move them wherever. Now, and I think you have to go back. We say we've changed the neighborhood. Okay, maybe what we need to redefine what is a neighborhood. Because if neighborhood is family, then the answer is no. We haven't changed anything. Now, if the neighborhood is buildings, then the answer is yes. Change is taking place.
Yeah. Well, some of that goes to what the analytics turned out to be versus what I thought they would be. So when we agreed to do this originally, I really underestimated just how difficult it would be. It's one thing to say how many dollars have been spent and how many people have been served. That's pretty easy, but that wasn't what you asked. You wanted to know what impact have we had, right? That was the question.
Right.
Well, when you go back and you look at the history of these neighborhoods, and they've been churned, and Section 8 housing has been torn down, and schools have been changed, we rotate kids around.
Yeah.
All of that churn means you can't go into a school. I thought we would pick a couple of schools, we'd look at graduation rates, and we'd say, oh, look, the graduation rate is better because Metro has been here. Well, probably would be true, except the school's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the difference, I think, between a charity like a food bank, which is important. I mean, food banks are great, but food banks don't create hope. Metro creates hope. It's hope that changes lives.
When going back to Lee, wish Lee was here today. It's funny how his name keeps. Maybe it's because of our friendship with him, and respect. As I mentioned, and indebtedness. He changed both our lives.
Yeah.
When the Lord. When the Lord first spoke to Barbara and I about starting Metro, one of the phrases the Lord spoke to me about was to bring hope to the hopeless. Now I know that's a Christian phrase, but that's not. All I know is what the Lord spoke in my heart, and there were actually three phrases the Lord gave me, but one of those is what you just said, was to bring hope to the hopeless. And when I first met Lee, now once again, I'd never met Lee, never even heard of Lee Lebsack. But when I sat in his office, the Lord had already spoke to Barbara and I about starting Metro in Dallas. But one of the fleeces I put before the Lord was I would not tell one person this is what He laid on our heart. So when I got a phone call from a mutual friend, and they asked me the question, did you know somebody wants to start a Metro in Dallas? And my response to them was no. Well, of course I did.
Yeah.
It was me.
Yeah.
But I said no. And they said, well, I know somebody. His name is Lee Lebsack. He wants to meet you. So at that time, Greg Headley was my spiritual leader. And I immediately went to Greg and told him about the phone call. And he said, well, do you think this is of the Lord? I said, I don't know. I said, if somebody's starting a Metro here in Dallas, we need to support it. And he agreed. So Greg had a relationship with Lee. He made the phone call. So I went and met with Lee. And Lee told me the dream the Lord had given to him. And one of those key phrases was to bring hope to the hopeless. Well, when he said that right then, I went, this could be the Lord. But I told Lee, I said, I don't believe in coincidences. I said, but I do believe in prayer. I said, would you give Barbara and I 2 weeks to pray about this? And we did, and felt like that this is what God had for us. And so, going back to when I say a dream the Lord's given to us, really, this is what the Lord was and is doing in our city. He just asked us, would we partner with Him? And in a few minutes, we're going to ask people. That's what we're going to ask. This is what the Lord's doing in our city. Would you partner with us? And the thing that's even though there's a lot of change that's taking place in our city, we're still what people don't know is when they look at Dallas, they think of us as a convention place, which we are. We think of us as a place to relocate your business, which we are. But we're also, we have one of the highest rates, and this was in the analytics, we have one of the highest rates of poverty of children.
Second highest child poverty rate of any major metro in the United States, twice the national average. So if you look at the national average, childhood poverty is a real problem. There's about, depending on how you count, there's basically roughly 1 out of 5 kids nationwide lives below the poverty level. In Dallas, it's about 2 out of 5, so about twice the national rate.
Our deal went off. We'll be fine, brother. Steve, Chris will take care of that. All our kids are on lunch programs, and if they get up, they're on breakfast and lunch programs. So, again, going back to the facility, that's one thing that the new facility will allow us is we'll have more space to not only store food that our families need, but also when you heard me tell this, and I told this at one of our podcasts, I think recently. Chris will probably tell me if that's right. But this has happened the last 2 years at Christmas time. But the last time, this last Christmas, it was a teenager that came. And because James and I do travel, we're gone most Sundays. And so I had not met this young man. And he mentioned to me that he'd been coming for the last 3 weeks. And that, so I asked him why. I mean, he's a teenager. He's getting up. He's coming to church on his own. Why?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I really sense the presence of the Lord here. And I went, okay, when, in 2 weeks, probably by the time this is aired, we're going to have prayer over this property. And my first prayer is presence. If people walk into the presence of God, and they may not know what it is, but they know there's something.
They sense something.
Yeah. And it opens their minds and their hearts to what the Lord has for them. So that's my prayer for this new facility is that when people either pull up on the parking lot or walk in the building, that they'll sense the presence of God. When that happens, then change can take place. So this young man told me he's there because he sensed the presence of God. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. And then he says, immediately after, he says, you got any more of those donuts that you gave away before church? Now, to the untrained person, you would go, this is a teenager that wants a donut. I knew immediately that was not the case. Once again, going back to the poverty with the children, the kids are out of school for 2 weeks. That means 2 weeks, no food.
Yep.
So immediately, I put into action, okay, this boy's hungry. Let's figure out somehow, some way. We're renting facilities from the Lighthouse right now. We don't have any place to store food. Obviously, don't have any way of making anything. But we did take and get him food to his house. And
if he's like a lot of the kids, what you found out was he was not only hungry, he wanted to take something back for somebody else.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not just him, his family's hungry.
Yeah, and I think, when you think about the facility and all the great things Metro has done over the years, because of the size of the need, it's not like Dallas is a small town with 500 families who are in need, right? You could make Metro twice the size that it is, and there would still be an unmet need. So to go to the next level, this is what a business guy would call a scalable business proposition, right?
Yep.
There's plenty of need that is not being met.
No question. Yeah, it's amazing what the Lord has done thus far. I didn't see myself here. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't just think it'd be possible. I just wanted to, and you know this well about me. When I started, I just wanted to serve. Now older, still just want to serve because the need is still there. The Lord has raised up this incredible new generation, and you know all these guys. You know them by name. You've seen them. You've met them. And yet there is a whole new generation out there that's waiting for somebody to knock on their door and say Dallas Metro and invite them to come and be a part of what the Lord has for their lives. And so, each week, I know there are people watching that life sometimes has a way of throwing you a curve, and so we try to give them a nugget that they can work on. And when I thought about analytics, obviously I thought about numbers. Numbers matter. It must be pretty important. There's an entire book of the Bible called
called Numbers.
Yeah, right. Well, in Colossians chapter number 1, verse 6, it says, this same good news that came to you is going out all over the world. It is bearing fruit everywhere by changing lives, just as it changed your lives from the day you first heard and understood the truth about God's wonderful grace. Well, just as this generation that the Lord has raised up, just as He has changed their lives, there's a whole new group of kids out there and families that need to know Jesus is Lord and Savior. And so you've been with us now for over 3 decades, which meant you was maybe still in elementary school when we first started this project, right?
Yeah, or junior high maybe.
Yeah. We could talk about some junior high stories today, I'm sure. You know us well. Why should people partner with us? Why should they help us get this building up?
Well, I think a bunch of reasons, and I think, you asked me to talk about it from an analytic point of view. In Proverbs 13, there's a verse that says, depending on which translation you read, it says roughly, without hope, the heart fails.
Yeah.
Hope is a really interesting thing, and when you look at just clinically, why does Metro create hope? Well, the people who study this will tell you that for somebody to have hope, they have to have 2 things. Number one, they have to believe that change is possible. They have to believe that the bad circumstance I'm in might not be permanent. And number 2, they have to believe my choice makes a difference about whether I get that better future. So when you think about Metro's after-school program, the other programs, everything Metro does is putting there is something better, and you can make that choice. Very, very consistent. That's one of the reasons why then when you look at what changes people's lives, the analytics are called the intervention of adverse childhood experiences. That intervention of saying, hey, somebody cares about me. Mm-hmm. Somebody came to my house this week. They care about me. Yep. That is an intervention that changes lives. So Metro intervenes, Metro changes lives, and it lines up with all of the best science, and it lines up with everything that we believe as faith-based people.
I totally agree with that. Thank you, brother. Thanks for coming today. Thank you for your investment. Thank you for your lifetime commitment to the Lord and to the kids and their families in the inner city of Dallas.
It's been a privilege.
I've often wondered what heaven would be like. I've never worried, people talk about streets of gold and so forth and so on. And we used to even sing, we used to sing a lot of songs that weren't scriptural, right?
Yeah.
I just built my mansion next door to Jesus.
Yeah.
It's a great song. Not so sure that it's true, but it's a great song. But I've envisioned people coming up and saying thank you, thank you for investing in me. Thank you for caring. If that's accurate, when they grab my leg, my friend, they'll be grabbing yours at the same time. So thank you, Steve, for years of service and standing with us, believing in us. I really appreciate it.
It really is a privilege.
Yeah. Not sure how you close on that, friends. Thanks for being here today. It's so hard for so many of us to wrap our brain around not having hope. The Bible also says hope deferred makes the heart sick. There's no reason for hope to be deferred. We have it within us. The Lord uses people. He always has, always will. He wants to use you today. I believe that. Would you go to our webpage, dallasmetro.org, click on All In, then click on What is All In. Then I'm asking you, would you help us bring some hope to children and their families that live in the inner city of Dallas? There's a whole generation out there. There's so many people that are unreached. You can help us. Help us get this building up. Help us to do it absolutely debt-free. You're putting that next generation in a position to win. And it's going to help them. It's going to happen because of your sacrifice. So would you consider making a donation today or a monthly donation for the rest of this year? Michael is working with the city right now on our site plan. As soon as that's approved and we've raised the first phase, which is $2 million, then we're going to start building. I'm going to believe that God's going to use people just like you to be a blessing to the kids and their family in the inner city. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you next week. God bless you. Bye-bye.